Alright, the next section of our tutorial is going to wrap up our home page. And in this tutorial we are going to insert the goals section on the home page. So I'm going to toggle over here to our Dreamweaver document, and this is where we left off in our last tutorial. We inserted the profile bullet points and the Go Big graphic to the right, and then we also inserted a break tag that cleared the bottom, so it essentially give us a reset so that we can place our goals div underneath this section right below it. So I'm going to toggle back over to our code view here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to our portfolio main style sheet, and we're going to go ahead and start building the styling for our goals div, so that way when we put it into the HTML piece, it'll start to, we'll be able to see what's going on there. So I'm going to scroll down to our content area, and underneath content, and where we have that class that we created last time called float right, I'm going to place my cursor right after that closing curly brace and hit the enter return key. We're going to go ahead and put in a comment. So on the left hand side where we have that apply comment tool, we're going to click on that and then select the second option, which is the CSS comment. And then I'm going to put in a couple of dashes there to separate that out so we can see it pretty good. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this the goals section, so we know that this area is where we're going to put our goal styling. And actually I'll put goal section styles. Okay, then I'm going to hit the enter return key. So we're going to create a new ID for a div, and this one is going to be called goals. So I'm just going to type in the pound symbol and then type in goals, and then I'm going to open up a curly brace. Now we're going to go ahead and give this a width, and if you remember right, the width of our page is 900 pixels, and this goal section I want it to be a little bit narrower than the entire width of our page. So I kind of want it to float in there like a separate box. And I kind of want to do, I mean, we can play around with the value there, but I'm thinking like at least 20 pixels on each side. So if I do that, I got to do a little bit of math. So if it's 900 pixels, then the width of this this div tag is going to be 900 pixels wide. And in order to center this box within our content area, I need to do our little margin auto trick. So I'm going to hit the enter return key and type in margin. And I do want a little bit of margin on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 5 pixels for the top and bottom margin, and then left and right I want auto. So I'm doing this shorthand. This 5 pixels represents the top and bottom because they're the same values, and then this auto represents the left and right sides because they're also the same values. Okay, I want a little bit of a border to go around this just to give it some dimension. Not necessarily need to, but I'm going to go ahead and add one on mine. So I'm going to do a border, and I'm just going to make it real simple, 1 pixel solid black. So I'm also doing that shorthand. So I have 1 pixel solid black all the way around my div tag there. Okay. In terms of a height, I don't need a height. I want it to grow as it is. I think I will add a background color though, just so that it stands out a little bit differently in my home page. So I'm going to hit the enter return key, and I'm going to do background, and I'm going to do a color here. Now I'm going to do something just slightly different than we've done before, and I just want to show this to you as an option. So in our color picker here, normally what I've been doing is just been selecting a hexadecimal number. So if you see where my mouse pops open there where it says color modes, a hexadecimal number is one of the more common ways of doing colors in web design, and it's just a 6-digit number. Shorthand, it ends up being 3 digits if those 6 digits are all the same. But there is been another method for doing colors that is not as used as much, and it's called RGB. And with CSS3, they've also added the A, which stands for alpha. So down here in the bottom, when you click on that, this color models, what this does is instead of hexadecimal, it gives you RGBA color modes or color numbers. So if you see the grayed out box down here, there's 0, 0, 0, and then 1.0. That's black, right? And if you see where that code is, you can see that how that works. If I drag this over, those numbers change. So if I'm in the red over here, it's 255.04, right? And then the A stands for transparency. So I want my coloring of this. I'm going to try to match it somewhat to the rest of my my page. So I'm gonna pick like a little bit of a gray, right, somewhere in the middle there. So looks like it says 105, 105, 105. How perfect is that? And then my transparency is at 100%, which is represented by the 1 there. So on here on the right hand side of our color picker, there's the alpha. That stands for the transparency. So we can actually reduce the transparency of this background just a little bit if we'd like to give it a different look, which I'm going to try. So I'm going to leave it at 60% transparent. So I'm reducing the transparency by 40%. So we're giving this a little bit of a shot. We're going to see how this works. But what's cool about this is that this is something we haven't been able to do in CSS2. So it gives us a little bit more of a layered effect, which is pretty neat. So I'm going to hit the enter return key here and make sure I end that line with a semicolon, and then hit the return key and then put in a curly brace. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pop over to my source code, and we're going to go ahead and put this div tag in so we can start building it and seeing how it's going to, fill itself out in our home page. So after this break class clear, on my line is line 31, might be different on yours. I'm going to hit the enter return key so I have a couple of spaces after that, and then I'm going to type in div id, and then hit the enter return key and then select goals. And make sure you get that right caret in there, and then hit the enter return key a couple more times, and then left caret / to close that div tag out. Okay. So next I'm going to go ahead and tab in, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of fill out some of these goals here, but I'm not going to style them just yet, so we can work on styling them in just a minute. I already know what's going to go inside of this ahead of time, which you don't always have the luxury of doing in web design. Sometimes you kind of have to build and style as you go. In this case, we have all the content, so we'll be able to just plug this in and then style it afterwards, which will help tremendously. So I know I have a little bit of I have a header, and the header is going to be goals, and I'm going to go ahead and do this as an H2, and I don't want it super large as an H1. And remember, we've styled the H2 already somewhat, so I'm hoping that the styling that I've already created for the resume for the H2 will also work for this. And if I need to, I will add a class or just style the H2 in goals, so that it has it a little bit of a different look. So make sure that you close that out with left caret / closing div tag or closing H2 tag there. And then I also know that I have some other subheadings that go in here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and style those or put those in as H3s, and so I know I have 3 of those. So oops, back up here. Got a little ahead of myself. So H3, so I know I have H3 3 times. So I have 3 of those subheadings. And so each one of those is a little different. The first one is the short-term goals. The second one is intermediate term goals. And the last one is long-term goals. And inside of each one of these, we also have list items. But this time, instead of bullets, we're going to use numbers. We're going to use a numbered list. So there'll be a couple additional tags that we'll have to style in this section. So go ahead and hit enter return, and then tab in, and we're going to type in an OL tag instead of a UL tag. So this is going to set this up as a ordered list. And there are two of these list items in each of these sections. So there's two for short term, two for intermediate, and two for long term. So I've got that. So I've got my two list items. So I'm going to save myself some time by copying that little snippet of code. So Command C or Control C. And then I'm going to hit the Enter Return key after the H3 and tab in and paste that underneath intermediate goals, and then do the same thing for long-term goals. So I have the exact same structure for each one of those sections. So if I pop over here to Live View, what I should see here down is I should see a gray box. I should have my short-term or my goals section there, and then short-term, intermediate, long-term, and then my bullet points fall on the left-hand side, and that's because I haven't styled the OL tag yet. And also notice that my transparency on this box, it's not super transparent. It's probably because I only did it at 60%, but also because there is a white background. And I might have to go ahead and preview this to see if it's going to work in a browser. It may not be doing it in the Dreamweaver live view. So we'll go back and test that in a minute. You'll notice that the width there, I have a little bit of spacing between there, and you notice that it doesn't quite, extend to the width of our poster. And maybe that's something I want to consider, is maybe I do want it to kind of have that same spacing. So I might go back into my width there and make adjustments to that. So so here we go. So I'm going to pop back into the code again. So we're going to actually go back and style these elements. So we have an H2, an H3, and an ordered list. Okay. So I'm going to jump back to our portfolio main here. Now, my background is I'm going to just real quickly before I start styling. My background is somewhat light enough that I can get away with black text. Now, if I want, I could go somewhat of a darker gray, and then use white text, and that might be a possibility, and maybe I go back and rethink that in just a minute. But let's go ahead and take care of some of the easy stuff, like the size of our H3s, because really I want my H3s to be a little bit smaller than my H2s, and we need to fix our OL tag there so it's popping in where it needs to be. Okay, so let's pop back over to our code view. And so we're going to do a couple things slightly different. Some of the styling we are going to put underneath goals, and then some of the styling we're going to come back up to content and put it up under content, because I want some of the same things for to happen on my on my other pages if I use those same tags. So the first one, I'm going to go ahead and jump from the H2 and the H3 to the ordered list tag. And remember, we have up above, we have content UL margin left 3EM. And remember, we've already done content LI. Okay, so I don't actually have to style this LI tag. It's already got that styling for me. If I look back here, and you can't see it because I don't have any sentences there, but you'll notice that if you look at the spacing between 1 and 2, and I know it's difficult to see, but the spacing is there already that I've put in for the LIs. And that's because this section is nested within the content div. So this is all about inheritance, and this is how things flow from one thing to the next, and where you can kind of where you can use it to your advantage, but it can also frustrate you if you don't know, if you kind of forget about where you've put some styling. So remember that this goals section falls in within content. So whatever we style within this section, even if we create a separate goals section, this goals section falls within content. So whatever ID or whatever tags we've used, that tag will inherit the styling that we've already put in place that's in content. So I'm going to go back to portfolio main and show you what I mean. So right underneath content UL, and right after that right curly brace on line 90 for me, I'm going to hit the enter return key. And so I'm going to type in content there and type in OL instead of UL, and then left curly brace, and I'm going to do the same margin piece there. In fact, I'm going to show you a trick here in just a sec. And go margin left, select that, and then 3EM, and then hit the enter return key, and then the right curly brace. Okay, so if I pop over to here to my live view, okay, you'll notice that that jumped over for me. Okay, so there we go, that popped over, and that's what I need it to do, right? Now I'm going to show you something real quick that can save you a little bit of time. This content here has the exact same styling, right? Margin left. Okay, I can actually do this all in one style listing. If I want to lump it with content UL, here's what I do. I put in a comma after content UL, and then I still have to type in content OL, okay, because I'm saying these are two different sets of IDs, okay, but I can combine them together. But I want these two separate IDs to get the same style, which is margin left 3M. So if I delete out that section there that I just created underneath, so I just essentially eliminated 3 lines of styling, okay, and click back on live view, it's the same, okay. So it's because that 3EM margin left gets applied even though I've put it all together right there. So for some that may be confusing, and if it is for you, then go ahead and do it. You know, create a separate ID with a separate property and all that. If not, leave it this way, and it'll save you, a little bit of time and some extra lines in your style sheet. Okay, so let's look what we need to do here. The other thing that we need to do is we put in an H3 right here, and in this section there's like 3 things that I want to do. One is I want to add some padding to the H3. I want to change the font size, number 2, and then I think I also want to change the font family to make it sure that it's the same as the other headings. Okay, so I'm going to jump back to, oops, that's not what I meant. Jump back to my code view. There we go. And so I'm going to go back up and find my content H1 and content H2. I'm not going to change anything about the color at this point because I can do that in the goals section. So, but then in the goals section, I don't have to worry about the padding or the font type or the font size because I will have done it here. And then if I use an H3 somewhere else, it will have that same styling that I'm looking for. So again, underneath the content H2, I just hit the enter key or return key a couple times after that closing curly brace, and I type in content H3. Notice that I'm staying in order here, H1, H2, H3. Just makes it easier to find. So you notice that, like what I did with the content UL and content OL, I could do the same thing with H1, H2, and H3, but also remember that I'd have to add I have different font sizes for these, so I would still have to create that separately for each one of those. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up as a curly brace, and I'm going to do padding 5 pixels, font family, and we're going to do the Baskerville one, and I'm going to hit enter return, and then font size. And so for font size, we're going to do 1.15 EM, so it's just slightly smaller than the H2. Okay, and then I'm going to hit the enter return key and then close that out with a curly brace. All right, so I might do a couple of other things to my goals font, but maybe I only want to apply it to my goals font. So I think that's the way I'm going to do it, and if later on, if I want to if I like that and if I like the way it looks for other fonts or the other pages, then maybe I'll do that too. Okay, so let's click back over to live view, and so now you should see the font size and the spacing and everything that I'm looking for. Okay, but now let's work on a couple other things. Let's make this a little bit different than what we have going on, and I'm not sure if I'm digging the gray. I'm going to go ahead and file, save all real quick, and then I'm going to go ahead and preview this in a browser in Firefox, and I just want to see if that gray is getting the transparency that I'm looking for, and it's not necessarily doing what I want it to do, so I think I might make adjustments there. So let's go ahead and toggle back to Dreamweaver and go back into our code, and I'm going to scroll down, and find our goals section one more time. So if after I've already put in my color here, I can make adjustments to my transparency by just deleting out the number and then typing in. So 40% there, 0.4 equals 40%. So if I click back over, it's just lightening up. So it's probably because I have just a white background and I'm just using gray. All we're really seeing is just a muddier gray going in there. So I think what I'm going to do is go back to code view here, and I'm going to delete that out and select a new color. And I'm just going to do like a darker gray. In fact, I'm going to go back to my hexadecimal colors, and I know which gray that I want. I'm going to use a real dark gray, which is 333. Okay. So because I'm doing that, I want to add some other coloring. So I'm going to drop down and I'm going to change my font colors a little bit for the different headings and things like that. So I'm going to start off with the goals ID. So I'm targeting the specific elements within the goals ID. And so that first one is the H2 that I put in for the top header. So I'm going to open up a curly brace there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in a background color. And the background color I want is like an orange. So I'm just going to select, like an orange there. And you know what? I kind of want to do a border on the bottom. Oops. Hit enter return. Border bottom. And I want this to stand out a little bit so it doesn't get lost. So I'm going to go ahead and use like a lighter gray. In fact, I know which color I want. That's a pretty good one. I'm just going to use DDDD. And then I'm going to hit the enter return key and close that out with a curly brace. Next, I'm going to toggle over real quick so you can kind of see that. But now I've got a problem. My text is too dark. That looks pretty good. That works for me. It kind of fits in, although I think the orange I picked isn't the greatest orange. I need to figure out what the hexadecimal number is for that orange up there, and that would be perfect. And that's easy to do if I pop this open in Photoshop, or if I open up my CSS designer page over here and clicked on my goals H2 and clicked on background. If I clicked on this little guy, and let's see if I could, I don't know if I can use the color picker and have that window open at the same time. So I'll pull this out real quick. There we go. So this is another way to do it. If I do this, it should allow me to use a color picker. There it is right there. See where that little sampler is? So if I click on that, boom, I selected the orange I want, hit enter return, and I'm just going to go ahead and close that out real quick. And there you go. So my oranges kind of match up to my design there. So that's one way of doing that. Another way would be just to go into Photoshop, and then in Photoshop you can find out the RGB color of a color, and then just type that into Dreamweaver or into your color selector in the code view. Okay. All right. So I think what I need to do here is change this black text where short-term and intermediate-term goals are, and then the bulleted list also needs to be changed. So I kind of want to have like a little bit of a color scheme going on. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that orange, or the same background orange in the H2 as the font color orange for those heading 3s, and then use white for the ordered list. So I'm going to jump back to code view there. So after goals H2, I'm going to hit the enter return key and type in goals H3. Now remember, I've already given the H3 padding and font style and font sizing in the content, and so those properties are going to inherit into the H3. So all I have to do here is type in color, and what I want is this specific color right there, that orange. So I'm just going to grab that, Command C, and then paste that in there. Okay, and then next, remember I've already done this for the LI as well. So I'm just going to type in goals LI and open up a curly brace, and color here is just going to be white, so number FFF. Okay, so here's the deal. These colors are only going to get applied to the goals section. This is goals specific. Now be careful that if for some reason you scroll up, and you've given your H1, H2, and H3 a specific color, that color overrides any color that you try to put in as your color for the goals H3. So that's why it's pretty important that what you make when you style your content elements, that you make them as plain as possible, so that if you want to change something later on, it's easy to do so and you don't have any conflicting styles going on. Okay, so I'm going to click over to live view there and show you what I've got. So I've got my orange headers there and then my white text. So I think that'll look pretty good with the rest of my design going on with the dark gray and the orange and all that. One last thing I still want to fix is I want to make sure my goals section, gets pretty wide there and evens up to that graphic, so it all kind of lines up better. So I'm pop over to my code view and my style sheet, and remember this was our goals section, and so if you remember right, we gave 5 pixels padding to that image, and so to make that work and line up correctly, we need 5 pixels on each side. So that means our width here should be 890 pixels. Okay, but we've also given this a border, so that's a 1 pixel border, right? And so that's actually going to add 2 pixels into the width of our div tag. So this should actually be 888 pixels if we've done this correctly. So let's look at our live view, and boom, it should line up just about perfectly there right next to that image. Okay, so there you go. Now all you need to do is copy and paste your actual goals into this section, your short term, and all you have to do is copy and paste the text. You've got the bullet points there, or the numbered bullets there, and you've got the headings there. All you need now is to put in your content. Alright, so the next section, in the next tutorial, we're going to move on to the education research page, which is very similar to the career research page. So those two pages should go pretty smoothly. And then last but not least, we have the showcase page. We are just about there.